of Nite was a place of life and movement, filled with the constant chatter of traders, the honking of buses in the early hours of the morning. The markets overflowed with fresh produce, the scent of roasted maize filling the air as the river stretched lazily beyond the city outskirts, its musky depths hiding secrets older than itself. Amidst this vibrant chaos, an 8-year-old girl named Adaobi lived with her aunt Nenna, a woman whose past was shrouded in mystery. Adaobi has once been a cheerful child, full of laughter, but life had turned cruel far too early for her. Adaobi lost her parents in a tragic auto crash, leaving her alone in the world. The accident was brutal. Her father had been driving back from a family visit when the car lost control, skidding off the road and colliding with a tree. The impact was instant, crushing the front of the car. Her mother had screamed her last breath, and the world has gone black. When Adaobi woke up in the hospital, she was an orphan. Adaobi being the only survivor, her world had shattered, but her aunt has taken her in, raising her as her own. Though Nenna provided for her, but Adaobi felt something was off and still feels lonely. Nenna was her father's only sister. She was a kind woman in her way. Adaobi never lacked food, clothes, or roof over her head, but there was a secret about her, something she never spoke of. Every evening, just as the sun began to set, Nenna would leave the house, dressed in white, carrying a small calabash filled with palm oil, kola nuts, and lit candle. "Adaobi, do not follow me," she would warn in a stern voice that allowed no argument. "Stay in the house until I return." But curiosity burned within the child. Where did my auntie go every night? And why was I not allowed to follow her? She questioned within herself. One fateful evening, Adaobi decided to find out. The night was heavy with the scent of rain. Though none had fallen, Adaobi, now old enough to question the world around her, made up her mind. That evening, she waited, her heart thumping in anticipation as her aunt steps out, her white wrapper flowing behind her like a mist. The woman moved with purpose, her feet barely making a sound on the dirt path as she disappeared into the distance. Adaobi hesitated for only a moment before she slipped out of the house, keeping to the shadows. She followed at a careful distance, her bare feet silent against the cool earth. She followed her aunt, walked through the market, past the old abandoned church, and finally to the banks of the river. Adaobi hid behind a thick palm tree. The great river was calm that night, its surface glistening under the moonlight like a polished mirror. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, something Adaobi couldn't quite place. From her hiding spot, behind a thick palm tree, she watched as Nenna knelt by the river bank, murmuring in a language Adaobi did not understand. And then, her aunt did something impossible. She stood up, took a deep breath, and walked into the river, deeper, deeper, until the water swallowed her whole body. Adaobi gasped, terror gripping her tiny chest. Was my aunt drowning? She panicked. Without thinking, she ran forward, stepping into the river. The cold river reached her knees, making her shiver. "Auntie, I'm following you," she called out. Nenna immediately raised her head from beneath the water. her wide eyes filled with something between shock and anger. "Adaobi," she hissed, her voice echoing unnaturally. "I told you not to follow me." The river seemed to ripple around her as she swam back, grabbing the shy's small arm. "You don't know what you've done," she whispered, looking around as if searching for something or someone. "Let's go home." That night, Adaobi lay awake, staring at the ceiling as her mind racing. She had followed her aunt to the river, and now something had followed her home. Hey lovelies, hope you've subscribed to this channel. If you haven't, please hit the subscribe button, like, comment and share with family and friends. Grab your popcorn as we dive deeper into the most intriguing part of this story. Thank you. It began that every night Adaobi dreamed of a boy. He was no older than she was, with dark glowing skin and a piercing brown eyes that looked like the river at sunset. He wore a simple white tunic, barefooted, and his smile gentle. "My name is Toshi," he said, his voice soft like a lullaby. "I want to be your friend." In her dream, they played together, running through endless fields of golden grass. When she woke up, she could still hear his voice in her head. And the next night, he came again, and the next, until he was all she dreamed about. Adaobi grew older, her beauty blossoming like the hibiscus flowers that lined the market road. She was no longer a child, but a young woman. Yet, Toshi never changed. One evening, when she was 17, he appeared in her dream, his voice deeper now. "Adaobi," he said, taking her hand. "It is time." "Time for what?" she laughed. "Time for us to be married." Before she could respond, the dream darkened. The sky turned black, the wind howled, and deep airy drums pounded in the distance. A golden ring appeared in his hands. The moment he slipped it onto her finger, a voice echoed through the shadow. "It is sealed." Adaobi woke up, heart pounding, and there on her finger was the ring. The dream had been real, and from that day on, Toshi was no longer just in her dreams. He came to her in the dead of the night, whispering secrets into her ear, touching her like a husband. "She belongs to me now, and he belongs to her. But there was one rule. You must never let the ring touch water," Toshi warned, "or else." He never said what would happen, and she never asked. Years passed, and Adaobi remained unmarried. Men came, drawn to her beauty, but something inside her pushed them away, something stronger than her own will. She was 40 when she realized she had never known true love. Then one morning, as she washed her hand, the ring slipped. It hit the surface of the water, and the world stopped. A deafening roar shook the house. The sky darkened. Toshi appeared, but this time, his face was twisted in anger. "You have broken our bond," he thundered. "Now you will know suffering." That night, she did not sleep, and for the first time in decades, Toshi did not come, but something darker did. The shadows in her room whispered her name. She aged alone. By 50, she was childless, forgotten, and the only person who had ever loved her, her aunt, has long passed away. That night, she felt the weight of her choices. She had been bound to a spirit husband, and now she had betrayed him. Though she did not visit her that night, but something darker did. Shadows moved in her room, whispering and calling her name. She spent the next 10 years seeking help from pastors, herbalists, diviners, but no one could break the bound. At 50, she stood at the edge of the river, staring into its depths. The wind whispered, the water rippled. Adaobi, she turned. There he was, Toshi, smiling and waiting. Tears ran down her face. I don't want to be alone anymore. She took a step further, and another. The river embraced her, pulling her in, just as it had pulled in her aunt all those years ago. The water stilled, and she was gone. Some say, on a quiet night, you can hear a woman laughing by the river, whispering the name of a lost love. Adaobi, a woman trapped between two worlds, forever bound to a spirit she once called husband. A warning: never make a vow to the river, because the river never forgets. The city moved on, its people unaware of the tragedy that had just unfolded. Life continued. Traders still filled the markets, children still played in the streets, and the river still flowed, carrying whispers of forgotten souls. But for those who lived near the river, the story of Adaobi was never forgotten. Fishermen swore that on some nights, just before dawn, they saw a woman in white standing at the edge of the water, her face turned towards the horizon. Some claimed she would hum an Igbo lullaby, her voice blending with the waves. Others said, if you listen carefully, you could hear her whisper a name, Toshi. They say she was calling out to her lost love, or perhaps warning those who dared to make the same mistake. That brings me to the moral lesson of this story. Curiosity can be dangerous. Adaobi's fate was sealed the moment she disobeyed her aunt's warning. Not all mysteries should be uncovered. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Be careful what you bind yourself to. Not all love is meant to be. Some relationships are cages in disguise. Adaobi unknowingly made a covenant with a spirit, and by the time she understood, it was too late. Spiritual matters should not be taken lightly. Many in today's world ignore the reality of spiritual forces. But as Adaobi learned, the unseen world is real. We must be cautious of the things we invite into our lives. Disobedience can have a lifelong consequences. If Adaobi had obeyed her aunt, she might have had a different fate. Sometimes, wisdom lies in listening to those who know more than us, even when we don't understand their reasons. Freedom comes at a cost. Adaobi only realized the weight of her cause when she tried to break free. Many people walk through life bound by things they don't understand: bad relationships, addictions, spiritual paths. But breaking free isn't easy. Sometimes the things that once loved you will turn against you when you try to escape. Adaobi's story is not just fiction. It's a reflection of real life struggles, choices that bind people, forces beyond human understanding, and the price of disobedience. Let this be a lesson to all. Not every door should be open. Not every voice should be answered. Not every love is a blessing. And above all, never make a vow to the river, because the river never forgets. Now let's talk. What did you learn from Adaobi's story? Do you believe in spirit spouses? Have you ever heard of real life experience like this? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel at African Storytales by Abby. Like, comment, share with family and friends and your loved ones, and stay tuned for more interesting and mind-blowing story coming your way. I remain your favorite storyteller, African Storytales by Abby. Bye.